for now is I keep seeing videos on YouTube and Instagram regarding Asian people and their reactions to people of color, especially as it pertains to people most commonly described as Black people. So let's dive in. The name of this video, as you can see, is Dark-Skinned Asian People. Now, I know the titles I choose for my videos are not very sexy, but that's how I like my research, straight up and to the point. All right, so I know some of you have seen some of these titles on YouTube, like Chinese meet Black people for first time, what do Chinese think of Black people, small town Korean woman meets her first Black person, what Japanese people think of Black people, being dark-skinned in the Philippines. Well, let me let you in on a secret. Asian people were dark-skinned, or aka Black people, in the recent past. And obviously, there are still many Asian countries that have large numbers of brown or dark-skinned people. I most want to show you the Asian people that do not know or do not want to know directly related to past relatives that were all dark-skinned. These ethnicities are Chinese, Korean, Filipino, and Japanese people. This is Professor Li Jin of Fudan University in Shanghai. I saw an interesting video of him on YouTube. Check it out. I'm going to place a link to that video in the description area. One of China's leading geneticists confirms that all Chinese people can trace their genetic lineage back to Africa. What's interesting is that he originally set out to prove that Chinese people independently evolved, but the evidence forced him to change his position and admit that it comes as a shock to you. I was somewhat shocked that it was actually revealed. Although in this video, it should be somewhat obvious to you. All right, so just as a disclaimer, the following photographic evidence has been gathered from sources like the Library of Congress online, Google Images, Pinterest, and Getty Images. All right, so check out this video, and this is of the late Qing dynasty, which was approximately 150 years ago. As you can see, this appears to be a man and his wife, Qing nobility. You can also see that the woman's face is painted with a white paint or cream, very common in China, Korea, and Japan during this time period. You can also see that the man's complexion is very dark. No doubt her face was dark as well. So let me veer off for a minute and talk about why women painted their faces. There are several similar theories, but this explanation from reference.com summed it up pretty good. All right, so that reference goes on to read, pale skin is a long coveted sign of beauty in China, and skin whitening is an 18 billion a year industry in Asia. Although there are many modern companies competing in the industry, skin whitening is a tradition that dates back to the Han Dynasty. Traditionally, farmers and laborers had tan skin, so upper classes donned white face makeup to display their status. The association between fair skin and wealthy remains today. During the Sui and Tang dynasties, women applied red lipstick and white powder to their faces to have a pure white facial appearance. This look is no longer common on the streets, but it still can be seen in Chinese opera. In modern China, many women keep their skin light by liberally applying sunscreen, using umbrellas on sunny days, and wearing face masks at the beach. Skin lightening is also common. In a recent survey, 40% of women in China, Korea, the Philippines, and Taiwan said they have used skin lightener in the past year. Dermatologists offer facial peels and laser treatments which aim to lighten the skin. In addition, there are many pills and herbal concoctions on the market which promise to help lighten the skin. Such companies have received criticism for their unsubstantiated claims and potential health risks. Hey, did you catch when I read traditionally farmers and laborers had tan skin, alluding to the assumption that these farmers and laborers actually had light skin and they only got tan from the sun? The author is obviously showing his ignorance or bigotry. Well, we are going to see that it is not the case at all. These folks had natural dark skin. All right, so let's check out some more of these photos. If I'm going too fast, feel free to stop the video and take a closer look. This photo is from 1888. Check out the complexion on the man standing up. Yeah, not a tan. Some of these photos tend to be blown out, meaning the exposure setting was too high, causing some of the men closer to the camera flash to appear lighter than they really are. That seems to be the case with many of these old photos. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at different photos, not only from this video, but from other videos and sources online. Two photos show a Manchu soldier and a Qing dynasty soldier. I zoomed in on their faces. They have very dark complexions, but are typical of soldiers of that era. Here is another photo showing Chinese men and boys. Again, very dark complexions, very common for those times. Here's an interesting photo of an extremely tall man with other men all sporting dark complexions. I zoomed in on a couple. Now in this photo, there are several Chinese men. I circled the obvious, but as I said before, these photos are often shown with high exposure levels, although the men to the right do seem to have significantly lighter complexions. All right, I really, because it shows so many of the typical Chinese soldiers of that time period, many who probably had relatives alive today. Again, go ahead and stop the video and take a really close look. All right, so this photo was taken during the time of the Boxer Rebellion, as many of these photos were. The year 1900 was really not itself. Okay, so now here's a photo of two traditional Japanese men from circa 1868 skin. One man seems to be subservient to the other. This photo is of a Japanese samurai. This photo is showing a Japanese soldier having executed 3 Chinese men. I'm sure many of you know that Japan invaded China in 1937, and fighting and occupation continued until 1945. Again, here are typical Japanese people in the early 1900s. Photos were obviously staged by the photographer giving a glimpse of life in Japan at that time. This photo is of Japanese men and women. Check out these Japanese children and their complexions. Here's a photo of a temple procession in Japan according to the caption, and apparently photographing these events was just like the Qing Dynasty procession I showed you previously. All, if not most of these men are very dark-skinned. I do realize this photo is not of the greatest quality. However, I hope you're getting some sense of what I'm trying to show you. Okay, so these next 2 photos are of the Ainu people. They are supposed to be indigenous to Japan. You probably notice that they have different features than the typical Japanese we are used to seeing today. Again, look at the texture of their hair, not really straight, but more bushy. Print is from the Library of Congress called Blossom Time Tokyo, Japanese Women and Children. Obviously, you can see the skin color on these Japanese is a medium brown. There was no date on this, but it appears to be from circa 1950s. Here we can see a Manchu woman with 2 young girls helping to dress her. She is wearing face paint covering her complexion. In this photo, we can see multiple Chinese people. I focused in on the 2 women in the middle. One has face paint and one doesn't. In this photo, you can see several Chinese women. A couple of them don't have their faces painted. Now we are looking at another Chinese family. And here are more Chinese women. Here you can see a Korean woman of some nobility or wealth being carried by 2 Korean men. Now, here's a different group. These are Taiwanese Aboriginals from Formosa. Take a look at these people. Now, if you think about Taiwan today, do they look like these Aboriginals? For the most part, I say no. Now, as in many countries, the true Aboriginals are not featured, supported, and spoken about. They are often poor and forgotten. Also, what occurs is a mixture of Aboriginals and foreign occupiers procreating to produce different looking populations. What I'm suggesting is that the Taiwanese decided, like in many parts of Asia, to ostracize the dark-skinned individuals and to advocate for marrying lighter-skinned people, thereby slowly creating a lighter-skinned population over time. For those that are maintaining some melanin in their skin bleaching is the method they are choosing to fit into society. Here are several children playing or practicing acrobatics. Now, here's another Asian group of people in the Philippines, circa 1920s. They appear to be conducting a ceremonial procession. I see that the woman they are carrying has a noticeably lighter complexion. So again, this veneration of lighter skin has also infected the Philippines. I apologize for jumping around from culture to culture or ethnicity to ethnicity. I thought it'd be much more interesting that way. Anyway, as the caption says, these are Korean men. One thing that is distinctive about Korean men is the type of wide-brimmed black hat worn at this time in Korea. Here are more Korean men at the turn of the century. All right, I really like this photograph of this Fucha woman from Fujian province, Japan. She reminds me of an AKA black woman that I know who has very similar features. Here are two Fucha women that appear to be nurses. I really love that there's been photographic evidence that has been shared. It makes it a lot easier to prove my point. Unlike when I am creating videos on Europeans of color, I know there was a lot of photographic evidence, etc., but it will probably never see the light of day. We can often only find descriptions written in books. Okay, so here we can see a Vietnamese orphanage from the late 1800s. You will notice a range of complexions and also some white children, probably missionaries' kids. Here's a group of Aboriginal Montagnard people from Vietnam. I remember reading about some of them aligning with the US forces against the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War, although never did they mention their very dark complexions. So here's a photo of a young girl from Lao Cai, North Vietnam. Not what you think of regarding people of North Vietnam today. The people they show on TV today are very pale in complexion. Unfortunately, I believe the original people have been mixed and pushed towards valuing lighter skin. All right, here's a young Cambodian soldier. Check out his deep, swarthy complexion. Here are some more young male Cambodian soldiers. Here again are some more young Cambodian men. Their complexions are even deeper and swarthier than the two previous photos. This was an interesting photo. This was labeled as a Cambodian aristocratic boy, basically meaning his family had some wealth. In this photo, you can see the French soldiers surrounding the King of Cambodia during the mid-1940s. Of course, the French colonized and occupied Cambodia for many years. All right, so going back to the Philippines, women from the Philippines with their baby. Do they look like Filipinos that we are shown today? I want to deviate for a moment to reemphasize my point regarding complexions. Here are some racist cartoons regarding the people of the Philippines. I obviously don't condone racist satire. However, it does illustrate what America at the time understood Filipinos and other ethnicities to look like. These cartoons that I'm showing you come from Puck Magazine, the first successful satirical magazine in the United States. It was founded in 1871 as a German language magazine, and then in 1877, the first English versions were printed. The other cartoons are from Judge Magazine. They were established in 1881 and ran until 1947. According to Wikipedia.com. These cartoons depict as children who are ignorant and must be taught by the United States. In my opinion, these cultures existed just fine without the interference of foreigners, but leave it to white supremacists to feel like they know better than anyone else because of their lack of melanin in their skin. Anyway, here you can see cartoons from Judge Magazine and the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper. My point again here is to point out what Americans' understanding was of the original people of these countries look like and what a stark difference as compared to today. The same thing occurred here in the United States, but I'll leave that for another video. So here's a group of Filipino girls with various complexions and facial types. Here's a group of Filipino girls and boys from the 1930s. I often think we get stuck into believing only one type of people with only one type of hair texture can belong to the same landmass. This is another example. These children have obviously dark complexions. However, they have straight hair. Other Filipinos that have bushy and tight curled hair exist. Again, just like the Americas. However, as I said before, I will tackle that in another video. Okay, so three models from the 1930s. All right, so going back to the Korean people, again, as I mentioned before, you can look at hats worn at that time. These men look like farmers carrying their goods to market. Here are a row of men and children eating. As I mentioned before, you can see the complexions of the two children in the foreground are blown out and overexposed. Here are some more examples of Korean people. This is a very interesting photo of a Korean wedding. As you can see, I've pointed to the girl with their face while the rest of the wedding party does not. Here's another interesting slide showing Japanese soldiers during the occupation of Korea. A lot of these photos are self-explanatory, so I'll hold my descriptions. So here is a Malay family from Singapore, 1878. These are the Magao caves located in China. Look at the complexions of these Chinese from hundreds of years ago. Apparently, the Chinese people have been dark complexioned for a long time. As one of the leading Chinese geneticists stated earlier in the video, the Chinese are genetically linked to their African descendants. Here are more cave murals. Okay, so I'm moving on to a new focus. The images are selective service registration cards from 1897. These cards and the following cards were obtained from fold3.com, an online archival website. These particular cards belong to the Japanese US immigrants that volunteered to be called up at wartime. I'm showing you these cards to demonstrate where they were born and what complexions they had. These cards show this man born in Japan and has a dark brown complexion. This man was born in Japan and also had a dark brown complexion. This man was born in Japan with a dark brown complexion. This man was born in Japan with a light brown complexion. This man was born in China with a dark brown complexion. This man was born with a dark complexion. This man was born in China with a dark brown complexion. And this man was born in China with a dark complexion. Thousands of these US Selective Service cards. I just wanted to show you a sample to impress upon you that regardless of what the present Asian people say they look like today and in their history, their recent relatives were for the most part dark complexioned. And in the case of the Chinese, directly related to African people. Maybe one day the other Asian ethnicities will admit to their lineage. All right, so I just want to touch on something real quick. The prevailing scientific theory is that people from Asia entered into North America during the Ice Age about 16,500 years ago via the Bering Land Bridge that was created by the ice and snow that connected Asia to North America, Alaska. These Asian people are known today as Native Americans. This theory is widely accepted by the scientific community. If you want to read up about this, one source is the NPS.gov website. NPS, the National Park Service. And the title of the page is History of the Bering Land Bridge Theory. There is also another theory that I actually believe in, which states that people migrated from Asia to America at a time when the ice receded almost, thereby allowing enough vegetation and small game to be available for consumption for the journey. The theory also assumes that migrating people walked along the coast. You can check out the complete alternate theory on the Smith website at smithsonianmagazine.com. You can enter into the search bar, first humans entered Americas along the coast, not through the ice. I personally think that these migrants utilized small boat line, making their way across, stopping when they had to. I believe small watercraft have been used a lot longer than many scientists. Now keep in mind, one of the leading geneticists in China that I showed you in the beginning of this video, Professor Li Jin, proved that Chinese people genetically came from African people. Now I'm making the connection that these thousands of years ago are the ancestors to the dark-skinned Asian people that I am showing you in my video. I also believe that these Asian Americans that were inhabiting the Americas before their arrival. This is why very similar looking features and appearances. Let's look at some of these photos so we can see some of the features and appearances that I'm talking about. Now, I'm the subject for now. I will be creating a much more in-depth video regarding who believe inhabited North and South America thousands of years ago very soon. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, so the point of this video is to expose the fact that most Asian people were. There is a clear prejudice in the Asian community that exists today, which looks down on Asian people and others that have dark complexions. This prejudice has, in my opinion, come from Asian culture's exposure and admiration over time to non-melanated Americans and Europeans, aka white people. We have seen how white supremacy has excluded some and dominated others around the world in the last 120 years. I have based my opinion on the information I have seen and gathered from various sources like cultural articles on the subject, YouTube videos, comments made by some Asian politicians, the treatment of dark complexioned Asian athletes, and the Asian media. If you go on YouTube, you can see videos that are titled like Why Chinese Girls Want to Look White, Why People Risk Their Lives to Bleach, Japanese Secret to Whitening 10 Shades that Removes Wrinkles and Pigmentation for Snow White Skin, The Whitening of Asia, Racist Tide TV Commercials that will make your jaw drop, and How Korean Skincare Brightened Up My Skin Tone. You know, I just want to say that people are beautiful no matter what their skin color. I created this video not to pick on or embarrass Asian people. However, I made this video to educate everyone and to hopefully see that there are a lot more similarities than differences between people. I also created this video to expose white supremacy for what it is, a mechanism to exploit, divide, and control the masses for the benefit of the few. They know where they come from or who they come from, because they too have been fed lies. And regarding the subject of white people, as I always say, I will leave that for another video. The one thing I want to leave you with before I end this video is to say, know your history, know thyself. Thank you for watching this video. Know that there are more interesting videos coming your way soon. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my upcoming videos.
All right, guys, y'all know I didn't plan on doing this particular video. I ran across and I said, oh, this is interesting. It goes right into everything that I've been talking about. So anytime I see confirmation of things, I'll just post a quick video, and it was great to just show that real quick. All right, guys, peace. I will see you in the morning.